Understandably so. I've seen some of the footage. I don't have the full context. I can't imagine what context would make that appropriate, but I don't have additional details. And certainly, I don't have additional context. April, I don't think anyone seeing that footage would think it was acceptable or appropriate.
Happy Saturday and welcome to The Deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. We are back again for another edition of The Deal. You saw the clip coming in from the intro. I just want to go ahead and jump right into it. Val, again, welcome back to The Deal. Very disturbing. You saw U.S. government employees basically whipping Haitians who were trying to seek asylum in the United States at the southern border. We know that there's issues with immigration in the U.S. And it's a stark reminder that Black immigrants probably, Donald Trump said it, shithole countries, right? Don't get treated the same way. I would never imagine even lighter brown immigrants being whipped like the Haitians were. Tell me your first, gut visceral reaction to seeing that video of those people being beaten.
First thing I thought about was cattle herding, Ed. It's the same motion, the same way you manage a horse to manage cattle, doing roundups and how they used to do it in the Wild Wild West. That's the first thing to hit my mind. And to see these Haitians hurrying up to get out of the way, it reminded me of Bull Connor and his dogs when he sicked the dogs on protesters and they were trying to get out of the way of the dog. When you solicit the assistance of an animal to help you control a human being, you step way, way over the line. And that's what these guys were doing there. In my mind, it was what I call the number one law enforcement crime. That is to treat potential subjects and litigants as the lowest thing on the earth, to put fear in them, to encourage them never ever to break the law again, and to fear you when they see you coming. And that's what he was trying to do with the horse and the whip, put the fear of God in these people to make sure that they followed commands. They never tried to do anything against what the United States wanted again. And these are the very people that should not be on the street. Now, I know since then they've been placed on administrative duty so that they can never again, or at least until the investigation has been resolved, so they can not come in contact with immigrants. But my point, Ed, here, and I'll finish with this, is that we are always told that 99% of law enforcement officials are good people and they always do the right thing. That may be true. I'll accept your numbers. But I wonder why the 99% don't turn into 1%. You know who these guys are before they commit crimes. You know who they are before they put knees on necks and put people in chokeholds and shoot people in the back as they're running away. You know who they are, 99%. And you can save lives by saying, hey, this guy maybe should not be fired, but maybe should have a desk job.
Yeah, he shouldn't be interacting with the public.
With the public.
Right. Yeah, that brings up a good point, Val, and I do want to transition to it for just a minute. But, I always try to pick on your history knowledge I wanted to talk a little bit about the relationship between the United States and Haiti. People a lot of times, we don't know enough about the United States, let alone Haiti. But Haiti was the first democratic country in the region other than the United States, supposedly, right? Because the United States didn't allow Indians to be citizens or Native Americans to be citizens or Black people to be citizens, right? But Haiti was a democracy run by Black people that allowed people to be citizens regardless of who you were. And they had to fight to win their freedom from France. And then, in a strange twist, they had to pay reparations to France for their freedom. So, talk to the audience a little bit about the history between the United States and Haiti.
Well, it's the United States and it's the rest of the Western world. Haiti was targeted as a group of people that should be taught a lesson. This is what happens when you try to come out from under the thumb of a Western nation, especially a Western empire nation that's trying to make money from your free labor. And that's where the reparations came in that you just discussed. The argument was made that if Haitian had, if the island of Haiti had remained so and stayed under the rule of the French people would have made X amount of dollars. So now the Haitians owe the French this money because their freedom is taking this money away that they could have made on their slavery. And of course, the Haitians agreed to do that. It was that or continue fighting. And they paid them millions and billions of dollars. And even when it was over, the debt had still not been cleared because of interest and all other kind of calculations. But it was the West, and the United States was a part of this, let in all of the Cubans, let the Haitians stay back. And that was a bad mistake in our immigration policy.
Yeah, and we got to do something about immigration. Unfortunately, the Senate won't be taking up any real immigration legislation either. And I don't think anytime this year there's any room for it. And I suspect there probably won't be any time next year either, because Mitch McConnell's whole goal is to scuttle everything. But let's shift gears a little bit. And before I do that, I want to remind folks you're watching The Deal. That's Val Atkinson. I'm Ed Clark. It is Saturday, the 25th of September. We're all, fall has started. The weather's a little bit cooler. Hopefully, people are still getting vaccinated from COVID and all that other stuff, and we'll talk about that as we go along. But one of the things you mentioned, Val, when we were talking about the treatment of the Haitians at the border, were those people who do police work. And one of the things we had hoped was our boy Tim Scott down in South Carolina was kept saying that he had a deal, he was working a deal, he was trying to get a deal on police reform, the George Floyd Justice Act, and so on and so forth. Well, he failed. He didn't come up with anything. Talk to me about whether or not we really expected Tim Scott to do anything, or was it deliberate on the Republicans' part to put the one lone Black person up there to pretend like they were going to do something?
I believe it was deliberate on the part of the Republican Party, the GOP, to strut out Tim Scott, Senator Tim Scott, because of his race. And Tim Scott felt that he was going to get something out of this. Remember, there's a need for a vice president in 2024. And he's still got to run for Senate here pretty soon. So he's looking out for self as well. But going into that negotiation, I don't blame Tim Scott. I knew, who he was. It's like going into a den of rattlesnakes, and then you blame the rattlesnake for biting you. I mean, don't you know who the snake is and what he's going to do to you? So I blame Cory Booker and Karen Bass for not being up on things well enough and to going into those negotiations thinking that Tim Scott is going to come up and allow you to have some kind of qualified immunity on law enforcement officials. That was the one thing that his bosses, Mitch McConnell et al., told him he couldn't do. He can make a lot of other deals, but he could not give in or cave in on the qualified immunity. And so finally, Booker and Bass understood that Scott wasn't going to cave in on this deal, so there was no deal to be made. There was nothing going on. I could have told them that without going through weeks and months of negotiations. It's not going to happen. They thought they could wear Scott down and have him to agree. But what people need to understand when they talk about wearing the Republicans down or getting them to compromise or getting them to be bipartisan is that they are so afraid of their primary. You cannot get them to do anything against the Republican Party, because the minute they leave their party and side with you, they will lose their primary. They don't have anything left. Once we understand that, and I think too many of us don't understand that, and the rest of us don't believe that, but once we understand and believe that, it will affect our strategies, how we do things, and the outcomes we expect. They will never, ever go against the Republican power structure.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? I'm a born cynic. I don't believe anything. I don't believe the Republicans have ever come to the table, especially in the last couple of decades. I mean, once people like Mitch McConnell, and you had a Newt Gingrich and those people, the contract on America, and not with America, but on America, they made it pretty obvious, Val, that their whole MO was to gain power and never release it. And to do it by any means necessary, to steal a Malcolm line, they were going to do it by any means necessary, including, stripping people of the right to vote, and doing as many things as possible with securing the court. We talked about it a little bit last week, that the big strategy that they've won on so far is they've been able to reshape the courts, right? So now you throw that on top of you have useful, I won't call him a useful idiot, but just that's the way you say it, useful idiots in the form of people like Tim Scott to also run interference for you. You maintain power. I mean, that's what they're up to, is they don't want to relinquish any power, Val. And I think, it's clear that, unless the Democrats figure out a way to stop talking bipartisanship all the time and actually get stuff done. Which brings me to another point related to that, Val, is that you and I criticize the Democratic Party all the time. We're open about the fact that we don't believe they have the right strategy or whatever. If you had your Val magic wand, what would the relationship be with Mitch McConnell? How would you're Chuck Schumer all of a sudden, and you walk across the hallway to, the minority leader's office, what do you tell him in your meeting with him?
Well, the first thing I want him to know is that I'm aware of their strategy. And I'm aware that he controls 49 other senators in the United States Congress. And I am not going to play games trying to get 10 of those guys to go along with me to end some type of filibuster. I'm not going to play games thinking we can talk about what these bills will do for people back in their home states. And what people need to call there and say, I'm not going to play those games anymore. Our strategy is to make you irrelevant, Mr. McConnell. And I'm going to work on that right now. So if you don't hear from me, it's intentional. I am not going to try to bypass. If you got some things you want to work out with me, my door is always open. But I won't be talking to you anymore, because I don't believe you about the business of trying to change or work with us or make things better. Bye.
So that means I need to get you to run for Senate in North Carolina. You win, and then you become the the leader of the Senate on. So I mean that shouldn't take too long to get accomplished, right?
Yeah, right.
There's an open Senate seat coming up for North Carolina this time. But before we run out of time in this segment, I got one clip I want to play you. This is Bernie Sanders talking about the cynicism that he also sees in the Republicans because they don't want to raise the debt ceiling. So just take a look at this.
Mr. President, Republican leader Mitch McConnell this morning once again reiterated that the Republican Party will not vote to lift the debt ceiling, and in an extraordinarily irresponsible manner, Republicans have indicated that they will not pay the debts incurred under the Trump administration. In his statement, as he has done time and time again, Senator McConnell implies that this debt ceiling has something to do with future spending. It does not.
Okay, Val. So Bernie Sanders says, Mitch McConnell, you're saying that you're not going to raise the debt ceiling. You know for a fact that you didn't care about the debt when you passed the tax cuts for multiple trillions of dollars for wealthy people. One of the things that's come out in the last few days, and President Biden talked about it, was the fact that most rich people don't pay any taxes or very little taxes. What hope do we have to convince, or do we even try? Because you're fond of saying that sometimes, you don't want to try to get down in the weeds with people with statistics or whatever. But it's Jeff Bezos pays little or no taxes. Amazon, the company, pays no taxes. So when the Republicans start running off the mouth about they don't want to raise the debt, Donald Trump raised the debt and deficit by $17 trillion in the 4 years that he was in there. How do we deal with this if you can't get the regular guy to think about it, because they can't even imagine $1 trillion, let alone $17 trillion?
Well, one thing we're not going to do, we are not going to come up with a set of facts and statistics to make them say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't look at it that way. You know what? You're right. That's not going to happen. And I try to tell Democrats, you're wasting your time trying to come up with this. I don't understand why they can't see this. And 2 and 2 are 4. And yeah, they know that. They've been knowing it a little before you knew it. Okay. They're not going to participate with you as far as that's concerned. I think their strategy, Democrats, needs to be, how can we deal with people like McConnell and Joe Manchin and people like that? And the answer is simple. It's the same answer. You've got to put all your eggs in the basket of winning as many Senate seats as possible in November of next year. Now that's doable. You can do that. You can win as many seats as you can. Go do that. And if you end up with a 54 to 46 total, a lot of your problems go away. You don't have to worry about the filibuster anymore. You don't have to worry about what Joe Manchin is saying or doing anymore. Mitch McConnell becomes less of a problem. Okay, so concentrate on the kind of things that you can do. You're not going to, with all of our eloquence as Democrats, we're not going to get these guys to listen to our bird song and say, oh, he makes a point. That does make sense. I think I'll try that. Yeah. I'm sorry, but I hate to bust the bubble, but these Democrats, these Harvard-educated, MIT-educated Democrats think they can come up with a narrative that Mitch McConnell is going to say, you know what, you're right about that.
Yeah, that ain't happening.
Maybe I should do something different. It's got to be that way, Ed. Or if it's not, why do we keep trying? Yeah. Why do we keep throwing these statistical, and I'm going to say the word, statistical back buckets of shit up against the wall, hoping something will stick? Why do we keep doing that? Well, I think we do it because we don't have any other strategy. That's why I'm saying we need to step back and come up with a strategy that is within our control.
Right. Stop being the pointy-headed intellectuals on this. Well, you know what? This is a good place to take a break, Val. When we come back, we're going to go to Arizona and got some fresh video of the Arizona recount that you'll want to see. So we're going to take a break. We'll be back in a minute. You're watching The Deal.
It takes less than 1 minute to find out if you may have prediabetes. You can do it here. But I get it, you're busy, and busy people can't have prediabetes. I read that wrong. They can, okay? Just go to the site.
we take a look at the presidential race, Trump actually loses 261 votes from the official votes. Biden gains 99, and Jorgensen loses 204 votes. And again, these are all very small numbers when we're talking about 2.1 million ballots. These are very small discrepancies. So we can say that the ballots that were provided to us to count in the Coliseum very accurately correspond to the official canvass numbers that came through.
And welcome back to the second segment of the deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. It is Saturday, the 25th of September, 2021. Glad you can stop in. Please share the deal with folks. Tell folks about Connections with Val Atkinson. That's on Foxy 107, 104 on Sundays. And then we have a sister show, Talk Back with Larry Hall on Radio 1 stations in the Raleigh-Durham market. There's folks who watch this show, Val, from all over the world, Nigeria, England, South Africa, California, which is like a foreign country, Alabama. So we get messages from people from all over. So we want to continue to grow that audience and go out to the deal with edclark.com. My piece that's going to be out there that you'll see the latest one by the time this airs will be about the situation with the Haitian immigrants at the border. So please check that out. And in the meantime, Val, coming back in, guess what? Guess what the audit from the Cyber Ninja said? The Cyber Ninja said not only was the Maricopa County canvass right, that Joe Biden won, but he actually won by more votes.
99 more.
99 more votes than the Maricopa County auditors figured out. Tell me about these Cyber Ninja dudes, Val. What happened?
Well, they won, and people may think I'm crazy by saying that they won because they knew they never could come up with some bamboo stuff with black lights and that kind of stuff to change the election. There is no remedy, even if they would have, there's no legal remedy in the Constitution to take care of this. There is none. So they knew that in the beginning. What they really wanted to do is, the overarching goal was to sow a seed of mistrust in the general populace that all elections are fraught with evil and potential fraud. And you can't trust any of them. Now, they won that. They are doing well in sowing these seeds because the president now is asking that Texas be taken a look at. And he won Texas.
Wait a minute. So you mean he won Texas? They won overall in Texas, even on the House side. They won the Senate seats that were open. They won the state House. They won the state Senate. And there was fraud. Who did it help? Did it help them? Is that what they're saying? They helped the Republicans?
They want to establish that you can't trust any elections. So this whole thing called the electoral process that we call democracy may need to be shaken up a little bit and thrown out. They want it shaken up to the point that raw numbers don't count. Just because there are more people of color in America doesn't mean that they get their way over white people. They want a system where white people in the minority can still run this country as a minority, regardless of what the majority wants. And then they still want to call it a democracy.
Right. One of the things I found it sad and amusing when I was watching the release of the report. I do this for you people, so you don't have to do this. I sat there and watched that bullshit for hours on Friday of them going through their PowerPoint slides about why they found irregularities, but the irregularities didn't mean that the election results changed. They kept trying to shade it so that they could make these recommendations. And one of the recommendations that the head of Cyber Ninjas made, a guy who admittedly is not an attorney. He doesn't know the state constitution of Arizona or whatever. But his big conclusion was that there should be no mail-in ballots, period. And he based it on the fact that there were some discrepancies of about 24,000 ballots that appeared to have been mailed out twice, or they received back 2 ballots from people. Now, during his presentation, he didn't also go into detail, but most of those were for Donald Trump. Because I went and looked at the report. So they try to cast aspersions, like you said, on the election period, but don't talk about what actually happened. Those duplicate ballots ended up being in Donald Trump's favor. So I suspect if you go to Texas and do this, Val, and you do a sham audit there, you'll get the same results. It'll probably show some fraud on the part of some people, but they'll probably target people to go after for prosecution that are poor, Black, brown. And they won't say anything about the duplicate ballots from the Trump side or things that look shady from the Trump side. I'll leave that alone because I think you hit the nail on the head that they just want to cast aspersions on all elections. Mm-hmm. The other thing that I found interesting in my other life, a lot of people don't know this, but I'm an IT person. And I watched that very closely when they were talking about the computers and the logs and all that stuff. And they got very convoluted and complicated and started saying words. And I do this for a living. And I was like, that's totally irrelevant. They started talking about logs and people logging into the computer back in 2019. And they went through this whole series of all these logins in 2019. When was the election for president, Val? It was in 2020. Well, I think they caught themselves in the middle of their presentation and realized that they had gone through this whole litany of logins in 2019 and never talked about any in 2020 before or after. They talked about a purge of data in 2019. And then I could see on their face like this recognition that, oh, hell, we're talking about the wrong year. But nobody on the Republican, leadership in the Senate in Arizona stopped to correct them. I picked up on it because this is what I do during the day. And I understood that they made a boo-boo. So let's wrap this up about Arizona because the real knock on to this is, of course, they wanted to cast aspersions on the elections, but then if they couldn't, they wanted to overturn it, Val. That brings us to 1-6, something that they don't even want to acknowledge. People like Mark Meadows, who is an embarrassment to me, to the state of North Carolina, someone like Representative McCarthy from California, who keeps making excuses and so on and so forth. So this week, there were subpoenas issued for 4 top aides. One of them is Steve Bannon and Mark Meadows, and then 2 other lesser people in the Trump orbit who are being asked to account for their whereabouts in their conversations they had with the president leading up to it. I think Steve Bannon has the most problems because he was not on the staff of the president, so he can't claim any immunity or privilege conversations or whatever. So the big ask. So I was reading Jonathan Turley last night, and he says that what Joe Biden should do is look at tradition and not release any information about the president of the United States and his privileged conversations. Now, Jonathan Turley used to be a respected attorney, and now he's a Trumpy. Why should Joe Biden listen to somebody like Jonathan Turley, who everybody on the Republican side threw out tradition and precedent on everything else related to how the White House ran, and now protect the conversations of Steve Bannon? If I were Joe Biden, I would have released the material already, but he's not me. What's going to happen? Long question. What's going to happen with the subpoenas for 1-6 committee first, and then I'll ask you another question.
No one that's been subpoenaed today will ever have to sit before a House committee. And I'll tell you why. They are going to fight this in the courts until after the election in November and after the seating of the 118th Congress, which will take place on January 3rd of 2023. That's when that'll happen. If they run it through the courts until that time, the new Congress, the new House, which most people think has a high probability of being Republican, that they will take back the House, then 1-6 investigation will be bye-bye. It will no longer matter. And these people like Bannon, they know that all they got to do is play the long game and wait them out until the Republicans take back over the House, play it in the courts, which they got tons of people at all three levels of the federal court system. And they can escape this. So I don't have a lot of hopes. I mean, I wish that it could come to fruition and that these people could be forced to get on the stand and make some statements or be held accountable. But I'm not very hopeful that that can happen simply because of the election that's scheduled to happen in November. I believe it's the 2nd, if I'm not mistaken, of next year. And the impending placement of the 118th Congress. We got a long way to go as far as that 1-6 committee is concerned. Nothing should be taken for granted at this time.
Yeah. Well, you know, the other thing that happened this week related to the orange guy, Weisselberg's attorneys were back in court. If you remember, Weisselberg was the money man. He was the bag man for the Trump syndicate. And because of that, being the bag man for Donald Trump, what we know is that his attorney said there was going to be even more documents released, and he thinks that there's going to be more people indicted. Right? So, if that's the case, do we have any hope that any of the Trump children will be doing the perp walk? Weisselberg took it. I mean, look, give me something. Give me Don Jr. I really would prefer Ivanka doing the perp walk. But we thought that there was going to be some activity coming out of the Attorney General of state of New York. We haven't seen the kind of things or from Cy Vance from the Southern District. Do you anticipate that there might be anything at all that comes out of indictments on any of the Trumps or any more people from the Trump organization?
I don't think we have the courage. We don't have the will. If we were someone other than what we are, Ed, we would use all of our might to make all this stuff happen. In other words, and I don't want people to run away from their television sets or their devices right now, thinking, oh my God, Val has lost his mind. But something like a threat of martial law would go a long way. That's the only kind of thing that gets these guys' attention. All these games they're playing from top to bottom don't mean a thing. Back in 1861, President Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln, threatened martial law. He threatened to lock up the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. He's going to lock him up, along with a lot of other people. Things got on the right track real quick, okay? They knew he had the authority to do these things. But right now, these guys on the other side are playing games with us. They know there's nobody in the White House or no place else that has the courage to do the little bit that they can do to stop them from destroying our federal government, destroying this thing called democracy. I wonder sometimes how much we really love democracy when you see some people like those Trump followers just come in and destroy it because they can't win elections. You're allowing them to destroy it because you got to play by the rules. Well, one of the rules is martial law.
Yeah.
I ain't saying declare martial law. Let me get that straight. I'm not advocating that we declare martial law. I am advocating that we put the threat on the table. Right. You discuss it. It should come out of the mouth of Joe Biden. He should warn people that he has the right, the authority to declare martial law.
Well, there you go. You know what? My theory has been for a long time is that most white people in America don't believe in democracy, never have. A lot of people have a tendency towards authoritarian dictatorship. It's been prevalent in U.S. culture from the beginning. We've had spikes in it right before World War I. There were Americans who, were exhibited fascist tendencies. Then when you got to World War II, the Lindberghs and all those folks who, they would hold rallies, Val, with thousands of people with the Nazi flag and saying that you need to get rid of Roosevelt and insert a dictator more like Hitler. I mean, you've had all these John Birch Society and all that stuff throughout American history, all the way up to today. And you saw the most vociferous supporters of Trump be authoritarian and also fascist in their leanings, and they believe in that. So I'll leave it at that because I hear music. And that means we need to take a break. So when we come back, we're going to talk about COVID, whether you're going to get a booster and all that. I want to talk about missing Black people and why they don't seem to get any attention and a whole bunch more. So we'll be back in just a minute.
I'm young. I'm healthy.
There's no reason for me to get the vaccine.
But some of my friends got sick.
And then my close friend died.
And then it got real.
You think it can't happen to you?
But it can.
If you get the virus,
You'll try to catch your breath.
and wonder why you thought you were so special.
The virus is real.
And it's killing people who look just like us.
Get the shot. Seriously.
Get the shot.
Vaccine booster program. As part of the process over the past few days, CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices met to discuss the FDA emergency use authorization of booster doses of the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine. Following their vote, I fully endorsed ACIP, the committee's recommendations that all people 65 and older and those 50 to 64 years old with underlying medical conditions should receive a Pfizer booster shot if they received a Pfizer primary series. I also endorsed their recommendation to allow 18 to 49-year-olds with underlying medical conditions to receive a Pfizer booster shot. My resulting decision to allow the use of Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 booster dose for those 18 and older at high risk of COVID-19 exposure and transmission because of occupational and institutional exposure.
And welcome back to our final segment of the deal. I was a little worked up before we left, Val, because I think that, like I said, some people don't believe in democracy. So we'll leave it at that. We'll have to have that discussion some more, but I really don't think they believe in it. And there's more people than you would think that want to be fascist. But as we were coming back in, Val, you saw the head of the CDC. She was saying that booster shots are on the table, booster shots for people who have had the Pfizer vaccine, people who were elderly like myself, and also had pre-existing conditions. But she threw in one other group of people, which is healthcare workers. The panel actually didn't vote. It was a close vote. But they said, well, if you're a healthcare worker, you're 18 to 50, you probably don't need it. But the CDC director stepped in and said, you know what? I disagree. If I was on the panel, I would vote for anybody in healthcare to get the booster shot. I talked to someone in healthcare and I talked to somebody in the funeral business this week, Val. One, the person in the funeral business is still getting a bunch of bodies every week of people with COVID in places like where I grew up and where you grew up in Johnston County, North Carolina, Harnett County, North Carolina. I don't even know how to ask this question, Val. I don't care if you're black or white or green or whatever. We always talk about here getting the vaccine, period. There's no ambiguity about it. Now that you can get a booster, guess who's the first one that's going to be in line as soon as Moderna has the booster? Me. I'm going to be in line. There's not going to be no ambiguity about it. I don't care, what people say. What are we missing in our approach, Val, to convincing people? Because I talked to a relative this week, knowing that somebody else from our hometown, our little hometown of 900 people, has died from COVID. And I asked her again, because she's always kind of cagey with me, have you been vaccinated? And she still wouldn't answer the question, yes or no. So you know what the answer means then, Val, is no.
Unfortunately.
What does that say, Val? Why are we still here? The vaccine's been out for a long time now, going on 8-9 months. People are still dying. We're about to start allowing booster shots, and there's still people not getting the vaccine. Talk to me about that. I'm still mystified.
Well, they don't believe you. I heard one lady that say that she was a Christian, and if she died of COVID, she was going to heaven. So, I mean, these guys, you got those kind of kooks out there, and then you got other people who think that this is a left-wing conspiracy, that there's no such thing as COVID, and it's all a thing to try to get Donald Trump unelected and put Joe Biden in office and turn the government over to the Democrats. And, I mean, it's all kind of stuff. So I don't think we're going to be successful in turning those guys around. A few people have said, hey, I heard a story last week of a guy on his dying bed. He was only 33, and he had 2 toddler kids. And he said he wished he had taken the vaccine for his kids' sake. And he died. And so I'm going to go out and get my shot now. There are going to be situations like that where somebody's going to hear a testimonial, there's going to be anecdotal information and that kind of thing, and people are going to change up. But I think we need more than that to make this a healthy nation and a healthy world. We're going to have to enact some policies. And I don't think we can go around grabbing people off the street and injecting them with COVID vaccinations. We can't do that. So the next thing we can do is to make it so that they have a difficult time spreading their germs, okay? In other words, we need to say that in order to participate in this activity, to get in this place, or to do this thing, you must be vaccinated, you must wear a mask while you're here, and you must practice social distancing if that's the case. If that's the case. And if you choose not to be vaccinated or wear a mask, you will be tested every week, maybe twice a week until you do. And if you are found positive from a COVID test, then you will be quarantined until we can deal with this, or hospitalized, or whatever you need to be taken care of. That we can control that kind of stuff. We can come up with these kind of policies to do that. But I think we are depending upon the first example I gave you too much. We're trying to get that exact type of anecdotal example out there that people can hear and change their mind, and they'll say, go down and get the shot. And I want to still do that. That's fine. I ain't saying stop it. But let's concentrate on what we can do to get the most amount of people to keep the most amount of people protected against those who decide not to do it.
Yeah. You know what, Val? I got a clip. It happened yesterday on Friday on The View. Let's take a look at that real quick.
So, since this is going to be a major news story any minute now, what happened is that Sonny and Anna both apparently tested positive for COVID. No matter how hard we try, these things happen. They probably have a breakthrough case, and they'll be okay, I'm sure, because they're both vaccinated up the wazoo, you know, a lot of vaccines. So, and the vice president is being prepped for her arrival, right?
Yep.
They cleaned the table, they did the hands, everybody's getting all cleaned up, and she'll be out here in a second. So
Val, Vice President Kamala Harris was standing backstage. It was about to come on, and they run on stage and they removed two of the co-hosts from The View, Sunny Hostin and Anna Navarro, because they tested positive because the White House required that they be tested before the vice president went on the set. And both Sonny and Anna are vaccinated, but they had a breakthrough infection, which we know you get.
Yes.
But the reason why it's okay if you get a breakthrough infection is because you won't likely die from COVID because of the immunity you have from the shot. You talked about the fact that there's all these stories that keep showing up on the news and in the paper of people on their deathbed proclaiming that they wish they had taken the vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
You just saw the clip on the set of The View. Two otherwise healthy people, looking people, because they were had COVID, could have spread it to other people, but they weren't going to die because they had the vaccine. All I'm saying, Val, is that at this point, I'm sick and tired of people making excuses for not getting it. One of my favorite podcasts I listen to is called Radio Lab, and they have a episode called The Great Vaccinator, and it's about the guy who came up with the vaccine for the mumps. And not only did he come up with the vaccine for the mumps, but he's in his lifetime came up with 40 other vaccines for other diseases, a lot of diseases that, you know, we don't have here in the United States, or vaccines that you have to get if you're in the military and you got to travel overseas, right? You've been in the military. I'm sure you got a vaccination card full of vaccines that you had to take. What's odd to me, or what's been odd to me about this thing, Val, is that we have a history of vaccination. If you look at your arm right now, there's probably a little spot on your arm where you stood in line at school and somebody jabbed you for something, or you could not go to school until you had this mumps, vaccine or measles or whatever. And this one for coronavirus, for COVID, seems to be so political, but I think it's attached to what we were talking about before the break, which is this desire to be contrarian that Americans have, to be so individualistic, to really want to be in a fascist state as opposed to a democratic state. Now, I could take it to the extreme and be the leader, the great leader, and say everybody will get vaccinated. Because you know as well as I do, I believe had Donald Trump won, he probably would have changed his mind and would have been telling people to get vaccinated. Because once he would have hit that million people dead from COVID, he would not have wanted to get to that number. Because you remember early on in COVID, when he was doing his daily briefings, when it was 4 people dead, he was freaking out. He didn't want to count the people on the cruise ship that had COVID. So I say all that to say, Val, get a damn vaccine. I'm tired of talking to you people. You right there, if you know somebody that you can talk to, convince them to get this vaccine. Damn it, this is real. People are dying. People are continuing to die, and we don't need that. We just don't need it. So that's my preaching for sermon on COVID. I do want to talk about one other subject, Val. There was a story that every time I turned on the TV the last 2 weeks, there was a missing young white lady. I won't even go into a lot of details because it was a bad story. She was traveling across country with a boyfriend. Apparently got in an argument. There's some tape of them being stopped by the police because they were having an argument. And the police treated this man who had abused his girlfriend like they were best buddies. They even got him a hotel room. Had it been some black folks, had it been some colored folks, probably would have beat the brother down. Probably deserved a beating in that case because he had hit the girl. And she ends up dead, Val. And that story has been on TV almost nonstop on every newscast, but there's no context with it. It was all, we got to find this poor, sweet girl, and nothing about the boyfriend being a likely murderer, and nothing about how the police treated the boyfriend during the traffic stop. At the same time, there's a young black man who went missing, and let's play some video and then we'll talk about it.
Cases, okay? The young man whose body was found earlier this month and not identified until finally, the graduate student, Illinois, Jelani.
Yeah, Jelani Day.
Till finally, yeah, his case got some publicity because the media was kind of covering their butts. And I'll just say it again, to call Gabby a social media influencer is not accurate. She did do a travel blog. She did participate, and it is believed wanted to be, you know, an influencer. But she had, it's reported, about 1,000 followers when she went missing, and was working to grow her audience. But the excuse that that's why she deserves so much more coverage than so many others who went missing around the same time, a little earlier, after, is just not correct.
So Val, this brother was a graduate student. He goes missing. His parents said, we can't find our son. He's missing. They say, oh, it's okay. People, leave or whatever. No national outcry, nothing. 3 weeks after a body was found in the river, then they come back and say, oh, by the way, we did an autopsy of your son. There was no urgency, Val, try to find black folks that go missing. Talk to me real quick about you, because you used to teach a class on the media, and talk about how the media decides which stories to cover.
Yeah, the media is in the business of making money. They make money through advertisements. They make money off of advertisers based on ratings, Arbitron ratings for your radio, Nielsen rating for your television. And that's what they're interested in. They get these ratings up by creating excitement and drama. And so any case, any type of program that will generate drama, excitement, concern, they want to put that out front. They want to give it legs, as it were, in media. They want to make it have legs to stay on for a long period of time, because this is going to increase ad dollars. So they think that putting a picture up there of a young, innocent looking, all-American white girl will generate more sympathy and more interest than some African-American or Latinx person that could be a runaway, could be a thug, could be a murderer, could be a rapist, could be all those things that Donald Trump like to call black and brown people. And that won't generate as much interest. The media makes that decision for monetary reasons. And it has nothing to do with media hating black and brown people or whatever. They just can't make as much money off of us. And it's about the business of making money. People got to continue to remember we live in a capitalistic society, and ever increasing is becoming a capitalistic world. I remember, I'm old enough to remember the time that you could have been shot dead if you were in China and you would utter the word stock market. Okay. It's the same thing with the USSR. No stock markets, no money, no rich Russians and all of this other kind of stuff. But look at what's going on all over the world. This is a capitalistic world. And the dollar rules, folks, whether you like it or not. And it has everything. It's like a virus. The dollar is like a virus. Everything it touches, it infects. Okay. Yeah. And it infects things like which person to put on your show to say this person is missing. You can't put everybody up there.
Right.
You're just going to put those up there that think that will help the bottom line.
Will help make money. Well, doggone it, Val. Being born colored gives you all kind of problems, don't it? So don't go missing. That's the storyline there. Well, shoot, time is running by real quick. I need to ask you what's coming up in the coming weeks. What do we got to look forward to? What's going on?
Well, you've talked about it a little bit. We got 2 shows coming up next week. We got Talk Back with Larry Hall and Henry Lancaster coming up on Fox 107, 104. And the week after that, we have Connections with Val Atkinson and Ed Clark and Irv Joyner. And the book I want to recommend is called Pearl by Bob Woodward and Robert Costa. Great accounting of a lot of things that went on surrounding 1/6, but that's what's going on.
Well, I've reached out to them. Hopefully, that would be a big thing if we could get either one of them on the show. But all you can do is try. So we reached out to see if we can get them on one or both of them on as guests. Because I think 1/6 it is a really important thing. We should never forget. It means a lot more than people let on. I know you folks, look, I know you got to go to work. I know you got to raise your kids. I know you got to do all this other stuff. But start paying attention at least a little bit to civics and the way the world works and the stuff that Val talks about how capital and capitalism works to your disadvantage. They want you to buy a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, that's what everything is. But you can come here on the deal and it's unfettered. You don't get all of that. We talk straight up, and that's why we do this. It's because we don't have to worry about an advertiser saying, well, maybe can you tone that down? And then I can say, I don't like this or that. So that's why we do this program. So this is what I want you to do. Go out and do something good for somebody today, and then come back next Saturday for another edition of The Deal. Thanks a lot. Bye.
We're cold. We're cold. We're cold. We're cold. We're cold.
Understandably so. I've seen some of the footage. I don't have the full context. I can't imagine what context would make that appropriate, but I don't have additional details. And certainly, I don't have additional context, April. I don't think anyone seeing that footage would think it was acceptable or appropriate.